I still had the scent of him on me. His sweat, his spit, his hunger. When I climbed into bed beside my husband, my thighs trembled under the blanket. Not from guilt. From the way that boy, no, that man, had made me beg. I could still feel the sting where he'd held my wrists too tight, the wetness still between my legs. My husband reached over, half asleep, and kissed my shoulder. Whispered, "Love you, baby." I stared at the ceiling, hollow. 2 hours earlier, I was bent over the back seat of a car I didn't own, whispering filthy things to someone who called me ma'am when we met. Now I was here, married for 35 years, 60 years old. And I wanted to die every time he said he loved me, because he had no idea who I'd become. I used to bake sourdough on Sundays. That's how ordinary I was. Dough under my fingernails, a podcast playing softly in the background, my husband humming while he watered the garden. We lived like a postcard. But now, I sit in the bathtub, fully clothed, my phone clutched against my chest like a talisman, scrolling up to that one picture, his tongue on my stomach, eyes closed, lost in me. I've screenshotted it, deleted it, re-downloaded it from the cloud, again and again. I tell myself each time it's the last. It never is. How long have you been unhappy? My therapist asks, careful, gentle. Unhappy? That word feels too soft, like calling a hurricane a drizzle. Flash. Our anniversary dinner last year. I wore red, the same dress I wore in '98. He told me I looked beautiful. I smiled, kissed him, laughed at all the right places. I even meant it, maybe. But I remember, that night, lying awake while he snored beside me, thinking, is this all I am now? The next morning, I got a message from the community college about guest lecturing in creative writing. That's how I met him. So, barely legal, technically an adult, but when he looked at me, it was with an intensity that burned through decades. Not flirtation, no, obsession. Flash again. Back in my kitchen, cracking an egg, hearing my phone vibrate and instinctively reaching for it with a thrill that felt wrong. I dreamed about your lips last night. That was the first message. He sent that cross the line. I told myself it was innocent. Then I told myself it was nothing. Then I told myself, just one kiss. Now I delete my call logs at 3 a.m. like a criminal. I've become a liar, a cliché. A woman who wears lace under dull beige sweaters. A woman who lies to her husband with the same mouth she moaned another name. With hours earlier. How did it start? The therapist asks again. I don't know how to answer. Was it when I stopped being seen, or when I started needing to be devoured? I blink. My coffee's gone cold. My hands shake as I pick up my phone. Again, he's typing. He's always typing. It started with a chair. One of those absurd plastic ones in the community college writing lab. Too small for most adults, especially for me with my hips and creaky knees. I was guest lecturing a 3-week creative workshop on narrative structure. He was late. The door creaked and he slipped in, breathless, eyes down. I should have been annoyed, but something in the way he moved, sharp, alert, too aware of his body, made me pause. He sat in the back, but he watched me like I was something to be studied, dissected. I dismissed it. I'd had crushes from students before. They come and go. A smile here, a question there, maybe a thank you email. Nothing like this. After class, he lingered. Said he liked the way I talked about unreliable narrators. It reminded me of myself. I laughed. I shouldn't have. I asked his name. Jude, he said, like the song. Jude, 21. A lit major with a minor in art history, and a body that looked like it had never seen a slow day. I told myself he was just being polite, eager, that he didn't mean anything by the way his eyes held mine too long. But then, he sent the first message. I keep thinking about the way your lips move when you say perspective. I should have blocked him, should have ignored it, but my fingers hovered over the screen too long, and some raw, hungry thing I hadn't felt in decades, answered before I could stop it. That's a strange thing to notice, he replied instantly. I notice a lot when it comes to you. After that, it spiraled. I'd check my phone between dinner prep and vacuuming, between folding my husband's undershirts and brushing my teeth. Jude's messages became the new rhythm of my day. He sent poems, voice notes, selfies, sometimes shirtless, always half-lit, like he wanted to be both worshipped and forgiven. One night, I told him I was too old for him, that it was inappropriate. You're not old, you're timeless. He said I was beautiful in ways girls his age couldn't understand, said I had gravity, said he dreamed about me. No one had dreamed about me in years. I tried to put distance between us, didn't reply for a few days, deleted our thread. Then one afternoon, while my husband was trimming hedges, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a book, Anais Nin's Delta of Venus, a note inside. Page 47 made me think of your voice. I opened it. It was obscene, erotic, intimate. My knees went weak, my pulse fluttered. He was playing a game I didn't know I still had the rules to. I looked out the kitchen window. My husband was in the garden, humming, and I realized I'd started to crave Jude not because he was young or beautiful or forbidden, but because he saw me. Not as a wife, not as someone's mother, not as a woman who used to be something. He looked at me like I still was something, someone, desirable, alive. And that was the moment it changed. Not when he touched me, but when I let him live in my mind longer than my husband had in years. March 4th. I think I'm becoming unrecognizable. Today I watched a squirrel twitch its tail and thought about Jude's tongue. I keep waiting for someone to notice the shift, but they don't. They just keep telling me how well I look lately. Like a woman who found God. I haven't. I found something worse. The seduction wasn't sudden. It crept in slow and sticky, like honey dripping down the spine. I'd be in the grocery store fingering avocados, and suddenly I'd hear him, "Bet you blush when you bite into things." And I would. Blush. Bite harder. People around, me, oblivious. His words infected everything, even my wardrobe. I started wearing lipstick again. Not red, that was too obvious. Plum. Dark and quiet, the way secrets feel. I wore lace under my blouse and thought of him while stirring soup beside my husband. I told myself nothing physical had happened, that I was still innocent. But that was a lie, because I'd started seeing him when he wasn't there. At stoplights, in my peripheral vision, Jude's mouth near my ear, whispering filth with poetry wrapped around it. In mirrors, I'd catch my own reflection and swear my lips were already parted, waiting. I'd smile without realizing. Fantasies became daydreams. Daydreams became distractions. Distractions, obsessions. March 11th. He wrote a story, a short one. It was about a woman who lived in a snow globe, untouched, perfect, always watched, until a crack formed, and a boy pressed his lips to the glass, begging her to break it from the inside. "You're the woman," he told me. I cried in the bath that night, quietly so my husband wouldn't hear. I wasn't sad. I just didn't know if I wanted to be seen or destroyed. There were moments I'd pretend Jude was in the room, just watching, not touching, just observing. I'd cook dinner with him sitting on the counter, eyes dark, head tilted like he was memorizing how I moved. I started performing small things, folding towels, cutting carrots, brushing lotion over my thighs, as though someone was recording me. My life became curated for the ghost of a boy I'd barely touched. My husband noticed the lipstick. "You're glowing," he said, voice warm. "Are you seeing someone behind my back?" He laughed. I did too. But I stared at him for a second too long and said, "Would it be so bad if I did?" He blinked. I played it off, but I could feel it. The part of me that wanted to be caught, to be punished, or forgiven. I wasn't sure which. March 18th. I imagined him behind me today as I vacuumed the stairs, his hands around my hips, guiding me, grinding against me. I came without touching myself. Then I made pot roast and watched The Crown like a good wife. How many women live 2 lives and only die in one? I started calling Jude late at night, whispering from the downstairs bathroom, door locked, light off. He never answered. He only listened. I'd breathe into the silence, talk about mundane things like they were dirty. "I'm wearing your shirt under my coat," I said once, even though it wasn't true. "Sometimes I pretend your mouth is where my heart used to be," another time. I touched myself in the guest room, pretending it was your mouth. He would only reply in the mornings, never direct, always strange. "Your voice is a knife I want to hold by the blade." If you died, I'd still check my phone for you. "Tell me what you taste like when you lie." I started needing those messages more than sleep, more than food. March 22nd. I kissed my husband tonight. Really kissed him, just to see if I could feel it. He smiled, touched my cheek like I was porcelain. But in my head, I whispered Jude's name over and over like a prayer with no God. I think I'm losing pieces of myself, and I don't want them back. One afternoon, I walked into the writing lab, and he was waiting. Sitting on the desk like he owned it, legs open, confidence like an aura. He didn't say hello, just tilted his head and said, "You're not wearing the necklace I like." I hadn't even remembered he noticed, but I wore it the next day, and every day after that. He started sending voice messages instead of texts. I played them before. Bed, like lullabies. Sometimes I'd cry after, not because I was ashamed, because I'd never felt so awake. Because I knew he didn't love me. He was addicted to breaking me, and I was letting him. March 30. My therapist asked if I believed in soulmates. I told her no. But maybe I believe in mirrors. And Jude is mine. Not the part that reflects. The part behind the glass, waiting to be shattered. My skin started betraying me. Hives, bruises from where I scratched myself during dreams I couldn't control. I'd wake up gasping, body wet, sheets tangled. Sometimes I'd find messages I didn't remember sending. "I'd let you ruin me if you promised not to stop. Tell me I'm still a woman. Lie to me if you have to." Once even, I'd leave him. Say the word. He never did. He only said, "I want to taste what 39 years of loyalty feels like." And suddenly, nothing felt loyal anymore. Not even my breath. Not even my thoughts. Just Jude, threading himself through every corner of my mind like a fog I didn't want to leave. The first time we crossed the line was in a motel off the highway. The kind with flickering neon signs and cigarette burns in the carpet. Jude had been waiting, parked in the far corner of the lot like we were fugitives. When I opened the door and stepped in, his eyes met mine like he'd been starving. He didn't speak. Just walked toward me and kissed me like he was drowning and I was oxygen. His hands were too eager, mine were too slow. I kept thinking, I could still leave. I could still choose not to do this. But then his tongue slipped into my mouth and every word I'd told myself, every rule, every vow, turned to ash. My body betrayed me before my mind even had time to mourn. He pulled my sweater over my head and laughed when he saw the lace I'd chosen. You wore this for me. I didn't deny it. We fell onto the bed like animals, messy, desperate, unfamiliar. He bit my shoulder too hard. I gasped. And instead of stopping, he did it again. And I let him. I wanted to feel marked. At some point, I whispered my husband's name by accident. Jude froze. I tried to cover it up with a moan. He didn't mention it, but I knew he heard. Later, as I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the thin blanket around me, I saw the outline of my wedding ring in the reflection of the TV screen. I twisted it, like I could scrub the guilt away. Jude was asleep, half naked, mouth parted, one hand still on my thigh. He looked younger now. Not a man. A boy. And I wanted to run. But I didn't. It didn't stop after that. It escalated. His apartment became our ritual. The creak of the hallway stairs. The way he always had jazz playing low when I arrived. Like he wanted to make the moment feel sophisticated, even though what we were doing was anything but. He'd rip my panties before I even got past the door, push me against cold walls, lift my leg with one hand and hold my face with the other like he needed every inch of me at once. I'd come undone in seconds. My body knew him faster than it ever knew my husband, and that terrified me. One night, he asked me to look in the mirror while he was inside me. "See how you melt for me?" he whispered. "Even your wrinkles look like they're begging." I should have slapped him. But instead, I came with a violent shudder, eyes locked on my reflection, flushed, wild, obscene. I didn't recognize her. I hated her. I wanted to be her forever. There were moments when my mind betrayed me, too. Once, while he went down on me, I imagined my husband walking in, the look on his face, the crack of his voice saying my name. The fantasy was so vivid I sobbed as I came, body curling into itself like a confession. Jude thought it was pleasure. It wasn't. It was grief. For what I had done. For what I had become. In bed with Jude, I stopped being 60. My knees didn't ache. My neck didn't stiffen. I was fluid, soft, alive. But the moments after, when I pulled my panties back on and wiped my thighs clean with motel tissue, those were the worst. I'd stare at the ceiling, chest rising too fast, thinking of my husband trimming roses or reheating coffee, wondering where I was. What would he think if he saw me like this? Not just naked, unmade, undone. Still, I kept going back, because every time Jude touched me, he made me forget the decades I'd buried myself under. He kissed my hands like they hadn't aged. He told me my body tasted like guilt and sugar. He whispered that he wanted to grow old just to know what my skin would become. And I believed him. I needed to. Because the alternative, facing the woman I was without him, felt worse than sin. It felt like silence. It was a Thursday, when everything cracked open. I came home from Jude's apartment with bite marks on my hips, and his scent still tangled in my hair. I had washed myself twice in his bathroom, but the shame clung to me like oil. My body hummed, raw, overstimulated. and I wanted nothing more than to crawl into bed and disappear. But my husband was in the kitchen, holding my phone. I froze in the doorway. He didn't say anything. Just turned the screen toward me, a message, still glowing. Jude, you taste lonelier every time. I'm starting to think he's never touched you at all. The air went static. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Nothing rehearsed, no lie, strong enough to stand up to what he'd already read. His face was unreadable. Not anger, not grief. Something worse. A dullness. Like a man watching his house burn down from the inside. Too numb to call the fire department. Tell me this isn't real, he said, and I couldn't. I dropped my purse, sat down at the table like a child waiting for punishment. My body felt too big, my breath too loud. He didn't yell. That would have been easier. He just asked quietly, "How long?" I answered before I could lie again. 3 months. He nodded, swallowed hard, rubbed the wedding band on his finger, like it might vanish if he wished hard enough. Was it worth it? He asked. I wanted to say no, that it was a mistake, that it was meaningless. But something inside me, the last flicker of truth I had, said yes. That broke him. Not my affair, not the betrayal, but the honesty. He walked upstairs without another word. I sat there until the sky turned black. That night I didn't go to Jude. I didn't text. I didn't call. I lay awake in bed beside my husband's empty space and stared at the ceiling like it owed me an explanation. But the silence wasn't empty. It was full of all the things I'd done, all the nights I moaned someone else's name into a stranger's sheets. The next day, Jude showed up at my door, unannounced, unapologetic. He smiled like we were still playing a game. You didn't answer me. I got worried. I pulled him inside before the neighbors saw. What the hell are you doing here? I hissed. He leaned in to kiss me. I shoved him back. My husband knows. Jude blinked. The moment hung between us, long and sharp. Then he smirked. So? You said you'd leave him. I never said that. You did, he insisted, stepping closer. Maybe not with words, but every time you let me inside you, that's what it meant. No, I said, backing away. That's what you wanted it to mean. His smile vanished. Are you really going to crawl back into that dead life? He asked. You'd rather grow old in silence than feel alive with me? You don't love me, I snapped. You loved the idea of ruining me. His jaw twitched. Maybe, but I did ruin you, didn't I? And I hated him for being right. I slammed the door in his face, locked it, slid down to the floor and wept until my ribs ached. The house felt haunted after that, not by him, by me. By every version of myself I'd left behind in borrowed beds and darkened rooms. I wandered the kitchen like a stranger, touched the coffee mug he used every morning, sniffed his shirts when he wasn't home. I started seeing flashes of Jude in corners, in mirrors, in dreams. But the worst hallucination wasn't him. It was myself, the woman who started this, who thought she could have both lives and never pay the cost. I wasn't her anymore. Didn't know who I was at all. A week later, my husband asked me what I wanted to do. I said I didn't know. He nodded. Then we wait, but you don't get to lie to me again. I said okay, but I wasn't sure if I'd already forgotten how to tell the truth. It's been 93 days since I last saw Jude. He stopped texting after I blocked him, but sometimes I still hear the phantom chime of his messages when I'm doing the dishes, or folding laundry, or lying next to my husband in the dark. My fingers twitched toward my phone. The ache never left. It only changed shape. Tonight, I made dinner. Chicken, roasted potatoes, rosemary. The kind of meal that says everything is fine without needing words. My husband chewed in silence. We spoke about the neighbors, the garden, an upcoming dentist appointment. We didn't speak about the ghost that lives between us. He doesn't ask where I go during my walks now. I think he knows. I visit the motel sometimes. Just sit in the parking lot, engine running. Room 16 has new curtains. I wonder if another woman is in there now, trembling under someone else's desire, thinking she's found the part of herself she lost in the middle of her marriage. I should be ashamed of what I did, of what I still want. But shame requires clarity, and I live in the fog. Last night, I dreamt of Jude again. He wasn't touching me. He was just watching, smiling that crooked, unholy smile like he knew something I didn't. I asked him what he wanted. He said, "Everything you never gave yourself." I woke up wet and aching, my husband's arm heavy across my waist. I laid there for hours, eyes open, breathing through the guilt like it was labor, like I was trying to give birth to a new version of myself. But nothing came. Only the weight of two lives. One I ruined, and one I'm still pretending to live. This morning, I put on the plum lipstick. No one noticed, except me, and the mirror. And the ghost of a boy I tried to forget, whispering, "You were never meant to be quiet." And maybe I wasn't.